Captain James stood at the massive window of the Galactic Council space station, watching the stars drift by. His reflection showed a tired man in his 40s, wearing the distinctive blue and silver uniform of the human diplomatic corps. The uniform had 6 different safety seals, 3 backup oxygen systems, and 2 emergency beacons, standard human gear that made other species laugh. The council chamber behind him buzzed with the voices of 24 alien species. Some floated, others crawled, and many walked on 2 or more legs. They all shared one thing. They thought humans were cowards. Captain James, a deep voice rumbled. Your kind always stands far from the edges, afraid of the glass breaking. The speaker was Ambassador Rod of the Stone People, a massive being made of living crystal. He didn't even wear a spacesuit, since his kind didn't need to breathe. Not afraid, Ambassador, James replied calmly, just aware that even the strongest materials can fail. We humans prefer to have some distance for reaction time. Rod's crystalline body sparkled with amusement. Reaction time. Ah. Your people put backup systems on their backup systems. You wear safety suits to routine meetings. The universe must think humans are the most frightened species ever to reach the stars. James had heard it all before. Humans were called the safety species behind their backs. Other races mocked how human ships carried 3 different engines, 2 separate navigation systems, and enough backup power to run a small colony. They laughed at how every human space station had 5 layers of radiation shielding when most species used 2. The monthly council meeting was about to begin when James noticed something odd on his tablet. Being human, he had 3 different data feeds running at once. Another cowardly habit the others found amusing. But right now, all 3 feeds were showing the same alert. A soft warning tone sounded through the chamber. The alien ambassadors turned to the central holoscreen as it flickered to life, showing a pulsing red dot near the Newton stellar nursery. Distress signal detected, announced the AI system. 3 research vessels are trapped in the stellar nursery. Conditions are deteriorating rapidly. The chamber erupted in voices. The stellar nursery was a dangerous region where new stars were being born. Plasma storms, radiation bursts, and magnetic waves made it nearly impossible to navigate. Who would be foolish enough to research in such a place? Asked Ambassador Rod. The ships belong to the Science Academy, replied a floating gas being. They were studying star formation when an unexpected stellar event began. How long do they have? James asked, already pulling up safety protocols on his tablet. The stellar nursery will become completely unstable in approximately 15 hours, the AI responded. The research vessel's shields will fail in 12 hours. The alien ambassadors began their usual boasting. My people are mighty warriors, declared a scaled being. But that region is certain death. The mighty clans would rush to help, rumbled another. But even our strongest ships cannot withstand such conditions. One by one, the proudest, strongest, and most warrior-like species in the galaxy explained why they couldn't attempt a rescue. The radiation would kill their crews. The magnetic waves would destroy their navigation. The plasma storms would tear their ships apart. James looked at his tablet again, reviewing the human fleet's capabilities. Their ships had been called over-engineered and wastefully redundant. Every system had backups, and every backup had backups. They carried enough shielding to survive a solar flare at point-blank range. He stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. The Human Federation will attempt the rescue. The chamber fell silent. Then Ambassador Rod laughed, his crystalline body chiming. Your people, the ones who triple-check their safety harnesses before walking in low gravity, the ones who wear radiation suits to diplomatic meetings. Yes, James said simply. Our ships have the highest safety ratings in the galaxy. Our crews train for worst-case scenarios. We plan for every possible failure. Because you fear everything, someone shouted. James smiled slightly. No, because we respect everything. Space is dangerous. Only fools pretend it isn't. He turned to the council president. I request immediate clearance to begin rescue operations. The human fleet in this sector can be ready in 1 hour." As the aliens whispered and chuckled among themselves, James sent the alert to his ships. They would need every backup system, every redundant safety measure, and every cowardly protocol they had. Sometimes, survival depended on knowing when to be careful. The council chamber's holoscreen filled with images of the Newton stellar nursery. Swirling clouds of purple and blue gas twisted around newly forming stars, while bursts of radiation lit up the scene like silent lightning. In the middle of this beautiful but deadly display, 3 tiny dots blinked red. The trapped research vessels. Captain James studied the data scrolling across his tablet. The situation was worse than he'd first thought. The stellar nursery was experiencing a rare cascade event, where one dying protostar was triggering changes in others nearby. The result was a chain reaction of solar flares, radiation bursts, and magnetic storms. "Display the ship's status," he commanded. The AI brought up 3 rotating diagrams. The research vessels were high-end scientific ships, but they weren't built for these conditions. Their shields were already at 60% and falling. "Those ships have 4 hours of shield power left, at most," announced a tall, tentacled alien. "Their systems are failing faster than predicted." Ambassador Rod's crystalline form shifted colors as he spoke. "The Science Academy should not have sent ships so deep into the nursery. Even my people, who can survive in raw space, would not risk such a mission." "How many crew members?" James asked. 32 scientists and crew total," the AI responded. "Multiple species, including 3 crystal forms, 5 gas brothers, and various others." The alien ambassadors muttered among themselves. Their proud warrior cultures had already decided the mission was impossible. Better to lose 32 lives than risk more in a futile rescue attempt. James opened a comm channel to the human fleet. "This is Captain James. I need status reports from all ships in range of the Newton nursery." 5 ships responded. The closest was the HS Prudence, followed by the Caution, Foresight, Vigilance, and Preparation. Standard human naming conventions that other species found amusing. "Prudence here," came the response. "We've been monitoring the situation. Shield systems are charged and triple-checked. All backup systems are green." One by one, the other ships reported in. Each had already begun preparing for rescue operations, running system diagnostics, and calculating approach vectors. It was the human way. Act fast, but never rush. "Your ships cannot survive those conditions," declared a scaled ambassador. "The radiation alone." "Our ships have triple-layer radiation shielding," James interrupted calmly. "Standard human safety protocols. The magnetic storms will destroy your navigation systems. We carry 3 separate nav systems, plus manual backup options. The plasma discharges will be absorbed by our multi-phase shield grid, which has redundant power supplies." The chamber fell quiet. James turned to face the assembled aliens, his voice firm but not proud. "You call us cowards because we plan for danger. You mock our backup systems and safety protocols. But right now, our cowardice makes us the only ones who can attempt this rescue." He gestured to the screen. "Those ships have 32 people aboard. Scientists and explorers who risked everything to study the birth of stars. They deserve our help." The Prudence's captain came back on the comm. "All systems checked and double-checked, sir. We're ready to begin approach calculations." "The Caution report's ready," another voice added. "Foresight standing by. Vigilance prepared and waiting. Preparation confirms all systems green." James looked at his tablet one last time. The human ship's extensive safety systems would be pushed to their limits. Every backup might be needed. Every redundancy might make the difference between life and death. "Send approach vectors to all ships," he ordered. "We'll proceed in standard safety formation. Maximum shields, all backup systems online." Ambassador Rod's crystalline form flickered. "You truly mean to attempt this?" "Yes," James replied simply. Because we can. Because we should. And because our cowardly preparation has made us the only ones who can. He turned back to the holoscreen, watching as 5 human ships moved into position. Their thick hulls, multiple shield layers, and backup systems made them heavier and slower than other species' vessels. But today, those same features might save 32 lives. All ships, begin approach sequence. Rescue operations are now underway. The cowardly humans were going in, and they were taking every safety precaution with them. The prep room aboard the HFY Prudence buzzed with activity. Rescue teams checked and double-checked their equipment, while Captain James watched from the doorway. He had transferred from the council station to lead the mission personally, another overly cautious human tradition of putting experienced commanders on the front line. Environmental suits at 100%, reported Tom, the lead rescue technician. He was running his 3rd diagnostic on the suit's systems. Backup oxygen supplies are green. Emergency beacons are active. Each rescue suit was a masterpiece of human engineering. 3 layers of radiation shielding, 2 separate air supplies, backup power cells, and enough safety features to make other species roll their eyes. The suits alone cost more than some alien ships. Medical bay reports ready, called Dr. Wilson over the intercom. We've prepared for every species we might encounter. Triple stock of emergency supplies loaded. The ship's AI displayed a hologram of the stellar nursery. The magnetic storms had grown worse in the past hour, creating waves of energy that would tear through normal shields. But human shields weren't normal. Primary shield grid at full power, reported Susan from engineering. Secondary and tertiary grids standing by. Emergency power cores charged and isolated. Other species used single shield generators with maybe 1 backup. Humans used 3 separate systems that could work together or independently. They called it wasteful. Humans called it being prepared. Navigation team reports ready, announced First Officer Mike. All 3 nav systems are running parallel calculations. Manual backup charts are prepared if computers fail. Captain James nodded, checking his own suit's systems. The aliens of the council would have laughed at how many times humans checked their equipment. They believed in rushing into danger with minimal preparation, trusting in their strength or skill to see them through. Latest data from the research vessels, Mike continued, pointing to the hologram. Their shields are failing faster than expected. We have maybe 3 hours before total failure. The rescue would be complex. They needed to approach through the storms, match speeds with the damaged ships, and find a way to transfer 32 people of different species safely. Each step had to be planned, each risk calculated. "Show me the approach vectors," James ordered. The hologram shifted, displaying 5 different paths through the stellar nursery. Each human ship would take a slightly different route, maintaining safe distances while staying close enough to help each other. It was another human practice. Never go in alone. Primary vector here, Mike explained, tracing the path. Backup routes plotted in case of unexpected solar activity. Emergency escape trajectories calculated for every point of the journey. In the prep room, the rescue teams were doing their final checks. Each team had practiced this scenario dozens of times. Not this exact situation. No one could predict a stellar nursery going unstable, but they had practiced similar rescues, trained for every type of failure, prepared for every emergency they could imagine. "Sir," called Susan from engineering, "we've adapted the cargo bay shields to handle the transfer process. Triple redundant power supply, separate control systems." James checked the time. They had used 40 minutes preparing, time that warrior races would have spent already rushing in. But those 40 minutes might make the difference between success and failure. "All hands," he announced over the ship-wide comm. "Final checks complete. Rescue operations begin in 5 minutes. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. Follow procedures." The rescue teams moved to their positions, each carrying enough backup systems to make other species laugh. Their suits could survive vacuum, radiation, and even direct plasma hits. They had backup plans for their backup plans. "Other species call us cowards," James said to Mike as they walked to the bridge. "They say we're afraid of our own shadows. But look at our people now." Through the viewport, he could see the stellar nursery, beautiful, deadly, and filled with enough radiation to kill most species instantly. But humans would go in anyway, not because they were fearless, but because they were ready. "Sound general quarters," he ordered. "All hands to rescue stations. Begin approach sequence." The cowardly humans were about to show the galaxy what real courage looked like. The courage to prepare, to plan, and to face danger with respect, rather than bravado. The first plasma wave hit the HS Prudence like a burning wall. The ship shuddered as emergency lights flashed across the bridge. Captain James watched the shield readings closely. This was why humans used triple-layer protection. "Primary shields at 80%, reported Susan from engineering. Secondary grid compensating. Third layer holding in reserve." Through the reinforced viewport, the stellar nursery looked like hell itself. Waves of superheated gas rolled between newly forming stars. Radiation levels were off the charts. The ship's sensors, all 3 sets of them, were working overtime to track the chaos. "Caution reports minor damage to outer hull plating," First Officer Mike announced. "Their backup systems are handling it. Foresight, vigilance, and preparation maintaining formation." The human fleet moved forward in their careful pattern. Other species would have charged straight in, trusting in speed and luck. Humans trusted in preparation and redundancy. "Energy spike detected," called out the sensor officer. "Massive solar flare, bearing 030. All ships, adjust course," James ordered calmly. "Switch to backup vector 3. The 5 ships turned together, following one of their pre-planned alternate routes. The solar flare passed through their previous position, powerful enough to have vaporized any normal vessel. "Sir, picking up the research vessel's signals," Mike reported. "They're about 10 minutes ahead at current speed. Their shields are failing faster than expected." The main screen showed 3 ships huddled together in the storm. Their simple shield systems were visibly flickering, overwhelmed by the stellar nursery's fury. Emergency power wouldn't last much longer. "First rescue team, prepare for deployment," James commanded. "Engineering, begin power transfer sequence." Another plasma wave struck the fleet. Warning lights flashed as systems struggled to compensate. On any other ship, this would have been a disaster. On human ships, it was what they'd prepared for. "Primary shield generator overloading," Susan reported. "Switching to secondary grid. Tertiary standing by. Backup power cores engage." The ship's excessive safety systems proved their worth as system after system took damage and switched to backups. The human habit of planning for the worst was paying off. "Research vessels coming into visual range," announced Mike. "Getting emergency signals from all 3 ships." The closest vessel was barely visible through the storms. Its hull glowed red from radiation exposure, and its single shield layer was almost transparent. The ship's crew had maybe minutes left. "Team 1, begin rescue sequence," James ordered. "Teams 2 and 3, stand by. Engineering, redirect power to docking shields." The rescue teams moved into position, each member wearing their over-engineered environmental suits. 3 layers of protection against radiation, backup air supplies, and emergency beacons that could punch through the stellar nursery's interference. "Sir," Mike called out suddenly, "new energy signature detected. The protostar is becoming unstable." The stellar nursery's center was beginning to collapse. The very space around them was becoming more dangerous by the second. Any sane species would have retreated. "All ships, maintain formation," James commanded. "Begin emergency power protocols. Rescue teams, you have 5 minutes per ship. Move fast, but follow procedures." A massive burst of radiation washed over the fleet. Primary systems failed across all 5 ships, switching to backups immediately. The wasteful redundancy of human engineering was now the only thing keeping them alive. "First research vessel in range," reported the rescue team leader. "Beginning docking sequence. Our shield grid is extending around their hull." Through the chaos of the stellar nursery, 5 human ships held their position. Their triple redundant systems strained against forces that would have destroyed any other fleet. Their cowardly preparation was about to save 32 lives. "Let's show them what human caution can do," James said quietly. "Commence rescue operations." The docking tunnel extended from the HFY Prudence like a lifeline through chaos. Rescue Team 1 moved carefully across it, magnetic boots ensuring they stayed connected despite the gravitational waves rippling through space. Their overly cautious safety lines provided triple redundancy against the impossible forces trying to tear them apart. "First contact with research vessel established," reported Tom through the comm system. "Their airlock is damaged. Switching to emergency cutting procedures." Captain James watched from the bridge as his crew began their work. The research vessel's hull glowed an angry red from radiation exposure. Without the human suit's triple shielding, the rescue team would have died instantly. "Warning," announced the ship's eye. "Protostar becoming critically unstable. Radiation levels increasing." "Rescue team, time check," James called. 3 minutes to breach the airlock," Tom responded. 8 minutes estimated for first evacuation. "We're following all safety protocols." Other species would have rushed in, tried to drag people out as fast as possible. Humans knew better. Fast was dangerous. Fast got people killed. They would do this right, even with disaster brewing around them. "Sir, the caution reports their primary power core is failing," First Officer Mike announced. "They're switching to their second backup." The human fleet's formation held steady despite the increasing danger. 5 ships, each using their multiple backup systems to stay functional in conditions that would have destroyed any other vessel. "Airlock breached," Tom reported. "First contact with survivors. We have 8 scientists here, 3 crystal forms, 2 gas breathers, 3 others. Beginning evacuation procedures." Through the bridge's monitors, James watched as the rescue team helped the first survivors into human emergency suits. The aliens looked confused at all the safety features, but right now, those features were keeping them alive. "Second vessel's shields are about to fail," Mike warned. Foresight moving into position for rescue operations. The stellar nursery was becoming more violent. Waves of plasma washed over the ship's multiple shield layers. Navigation systems failed and switched to backups. Power cores overloaded and transferred to redundant systems. "First group of survivors secured," Tom reported. "Beginning transfer through safety corridor. All vital signs stable." The survivors moved slowly through the docking tunnel, each one attached to multiple safety lines. Human rescue teams surrounded them, monitoring their vital signs and watching for any problems. No chances were taken. No safety check was skipped. "Caution reports successful contact with second vessel," Mike announced. 15 more survivors located. Beginning evacuation. A massive solar flare erupted nearby. The Prudence's primary systems failed instantly, but backups engaged without hesitation. The ship barely shuddered as it switched to secondary and tertiary power cores. "Last survivor from first vessel secured," Tom reported, moving to assist caution with second group. The rescued scientists watched in amazement from the Prudence's medical bay as Dr. Wilson and her team checked them over. The human medical equipment, with its multiple redundancies and backup systems, kept them stable despite the intense radiation they'd absorbed. "Sir," Mike called out suddenly, "the protostar, it's beginning to collapse." The stellar nursery lit up with deadly energy. The human fleet's formation shifted slightly, each ship adjusting to protect the others. Their wasteful shield systems, layered 3 deep, glowed as they absorbed forces that would have atomized normal ships. 23 survivors secured, reported the Caution's captain. Moving to final vessel now. Captain James watched the power readings dropping across his fleet. Every backup system was being pushed to its limit. Every safety measure was proving its worth. The very features that other species mocked, the redundant systems, the multiple shields, the layers of protection, were the only things keeping them alive. "All ships, maintain position," he ordered. "We're not leaving without everyone." In the middle of a dying stellar nursery, 5 human ships stood their ground. Their cowardly preparation, their wasteful safety systems, and their paranoid backup plans were about to save every last survivor. The last research vessel was dying. Its single shield generator had failed completely, and radiation was eating through the hull. 9 scientists remained trapped inside, and the protostar's collapse was accelerating. "Main reactor critical failure," called out the vessel's captain through a static-filled emergency channel. "We have minutes at most." Captain James stood from his command chair aboard the Prudence. "Engineering. Status report. Primary and secondary power cores are offline," Susan reported. "Running on tertiary systems. Emergency backup charged and ready." The human fleet had taken a beating. Their triple redundant systems were failing one by one, but they were still operating, still fighting, still refusing to give up. "Sir," First Officer Mike called out, "preparation and vigilance report. They can't maintain position much longer. Their shield grids are failing." Through the viewport, James could see the final research vessel. Its hull was glowing white-hot now, metal slowly vaporizing in the intense radiation. The ship's life support was failing. Its crew would die in minutes without help. "All ships, fall back to safe distance," James ordered. "Prudence will handle the final rescue." "Sir," Mike looked concerned. "Our systems are already at their limits." "Which means we still have limits to reach." James activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency rescue operations." The Prudence's engines roared as it moved forward while the other ships retreated. Warning lights flashed across every console as systems redlined. The ship's AI began listing failures faster than it could report them. Primary life support failing. Switching to backup. Navigation System 2 offline. System 3 engage. Hull breach detected in Section 4. Emergency seals holding. In the medical bay, Dr. Wilson and her team prepared for more survivors. The excessive medical supplies and backup equipment had already saved 23 lives. They needed to save 9 more. "Rescue team status," James called. "Ready for final approach," Tom responded. His voice was steady despite the situation. "Emergency suits prepped. Backup systems charged." The Prudence shuddered as another plasma wave hit. The bridge crew held onto their stations as artificial gravity flickered. The ship's remaining systems struggled against forces that should have destroyed them hours ago. "Sir," Mike shouted, "Protostar beginning final collapse. We have less than 10 minutes." James made a decision. "Engineering. Divert all power to forward shields. Everything we have left." "But sir," Susan protested, "that would leave us without backups." "Sometimes," James said quietly, "being careful means knowing when to take risks." The Prudence surged forward, its remaining power focused into a single shield bubble extending toward the dying research vessel. The ship's hull creaked as radiation and plasma battered it directly. "Rescue team, go, go, go." Tom and his team moved through the emergency docking tunnel. Their suits' triple-layer shielding barely protected them from the incredible radiation. The backup systems that other species had mocked were now the only thing keeping them alive. "Contact with vessel established," Tom reported. "Beginning evacuation." The survivors were rushed through the tunnel one by one, each wearing a human emergency suit, each protected by the same paranoid safety features that had saved the others. 8, 9, all accounted for. Last survivor secured. Tom called. "Rescue team returning." "All hands, brace for emergency jump," James ordered. The Prudence's engines screamed as they pushed beyond their safety limits. The ship's structure groaned under impossible stresses. The protostar finally collapsed. A wave of energy unlike anything they'd ever seen rolled toward them. The Prudence's last remaining shields flared bright as stars as they absorbed the blast. Emergency systems failed. Backup systems failed. Final emergency systems engaged automatically. Hull breaches on all decks. Susan reported. Emergency containment holding. The ship shot forward, barely ahead of the destruction. Behind them, the stellar nursery transformed into a graveyard of newborn stars. But they'd done it. Thanks to their preparation, their backup systems, and their cowardly attention to safety. 32 lives had been saved. Captain James looked at his battered bridge, his exhausted crew, and the rescued scientists huddled in their human emergency suits. Sometimes, he said softly, courage means being careful enough to survive. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as Captain James finished his report. The massive view screen behind him showed images of the human rescue fleet, their hulls scared and burnt from their ordeal. The ships looked like they'd been through a war, and in a way they had. 32 scientists and crew rescued, James concluded. All ships sustained heavy damage but returned safely. No casualties. Ambassador Rod's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, a sign of strong emotion among his people. You saved them all. Even with the protostar's collapse, we saved them all, James confirmed, because we were prepared for the worst, because we had backups for our backups. The chamber erupted in conversation. The alien diplomats who had mocked human caution just days ago were now studying the rescue footage with intense interest. They watched as the human ship's multiple shield layers absorbed impossible forces. They saw how backup systems engaged automatically when primary systems failed. One of the rescued scientists, a floating gas being, moved forward to address the council. I was on the last research vessel, it announced. Our ship was dying. Our shields had failed. We had accepted death. The gas being's color rippled with emotion. Then the humans came. They gave us their emergency suits with 3 layers of protection, backup air supplies, emergency beacons, features we had called excessive, features that saved our lives. Dr. Wilson stood next to James, holding up one of the environmental suits they'd used in the rescue. This suit costs as much as a small shuttle, she explained. It has redundant systems that most species consider wasteful. But in that stellar nursery, every backup system was needed. Our own warrior fleets would have tried to rush in, a scaled ambassador admitted. We would have relied on speed and bravery. And we would have died. First Officer Mike displayed the rescue operation data. We took 40 minutes to prepare, he said. We checked every system 3 times. We planned multiple approach vectors. We prepared for every possible failure. And this preparation, Ambassador Rod rumbled. This, caution, it made the impossible possible. There's an old human saying, James replied. Fortune favors the prepared. We respect space. We respect its dangers. That's why we plan. That's why we prepare. That's why we survive. The council president rose from her seat. The Galactic Council has reviewed the rescue operation in detail. We have come to a conclusion that will change how we view human approaches to space travel and emergency operations. She gestured to the screen, which now showed technical diagrams of human safety systems. From this day forward, human safety standards will be adopted as the galactic minimum for all rescue vessels. Their methods of redundancy and preparation will be studied and implemented across all member species. James watched as the aliens who had once mocked human caution now took notes on their safety protocols. The same features they had called wasteful, multiple backup systems, redundant power cores, triple-checked safety measures were being recognized as essential. Additionally, the president continued, we are establishing a new galactic rescue force, and we are asking the humans to lead it. The chamber, once filled with mockery of human cowardice, now rang with approval. The rescued scientists stood as one, showing respect to the species that had saved them through preparation rather than bravado. Captain James looked at his crew. The engineers who maintained triple backup systems, the doctors who stocked extra supplies, the rescue teams who checked their equipment again and again. Their cowardly ways had changed the galaxy's understanding of true courage. "We accept the responsibility," he said simply, "and we will approach it as we approach everything, with careful planning, with respect for danger, and with every possible preparation for success." The Galactic Council stood in respect as the human crew left the chamber. The species once mocked as the most fearful in space had proved something extraordinary. True courage isn't about rushing into danger. True courage is being prepared enough to face it and survive.